The morning after Christmas, Donald Trump slammed each of the three branches of government over their inaction on what he calls a rigged election or widespread voter fraud. Let's start with the Republicans in Congress. He says if a Democratic presidential candidate had an election rigged and stolen with proof of such acts at a level never seen before, the Democrat senators would consider it an act of war and fight to the death. Mitch and the Republicans do nothing, just want to let it pass, no fight. This is a sensation shared by millions of Americans. Republicans have long been seen as feckless or spineless, unwilling to stand up and fight, while Democrats are seen as more tenacious and more protective of their party members and party ideals. This is not new. President Trump is merely reciting and expressing the sentiments that Americans, especially Americans on the right, have had for years and years and years about Republicans who always seem to fold and capitulate on issues that they find important. For Trump, that's the election and the allegations of fraud and election stealing that has been going on. Next, he goes on to the executive branch. While the Justice Department is in the executive branch and purportedly under Donald Trump's control, there are some propriety issues with him directing the Justice Department and the FBI specifically to go after his political opponents. So he's had to take a really hands-off approach to allegations of election fraud and leave the FBI to take care of it on their own. He's clearly not happy with the results. He says the Justice Department and the FBI have done nothing about the 2020 presidential election. Voter fraud, the biggest scam in our nation's history, despite overwhelming evidence. They should be ashamed. History will remember. Never give up. See everyone in D.C. on January 6th. Trump is holding a rally in D.C. on January 6th. That is the day that Congress will be counting out the electoral votes. Specifically, Mike Pence will be counting the electoral votes and announcing the president-elect. Remember, the president-elect is not actually president-elect until that occurs, but Joe Biden has been called the president-elect seemingly since 2016 now by the mainstream media. So now we are moving into this. We're moving closer to the date that the electoral votes will be read. Trump will be holding a rally. And again, people are asking, look, tampering with an election is a federal crime. Where are the federal police? Where's the FBI on this? They're seeing a lot about specific evidence coming from Trump's team, coming from Rudy Giuliani, from Sidney Powell, from Lin Wood, people like that. And even from other lawyers and law firms around the country. They're seeing it on YouTube. They're seeing it in the news. They're seeing all sorts of stuff. They're seeing no action on this. And that is infuriating, not only to Trump, but to several Americans. And again, in particular, those on the right who feel like this election has been taken from them. Finally, Trump had some choice Christmas wishes for the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court has been totally incompetent and weak on the massive election fraud that took place in the 2020 presidential election. We have absolute proof, but they don't want to see it. No standing, they say. If we have corrupt elections, we have no country. And this is after lawsuit after lawsuit that goes up to the Supreme Court is either denied cert, dismissed for lack of standing in the case of Texas versus Pennsylvania, or is put on a schedule that clearly indicates that they're not interested in hearing the issues in the cases that would impact the current election. More likely, they would hear them in regards to the next election. Of course, this is a real sentiment. Donald Trump appointed 3 justices to the court. Many people prior to the election thought that the court would intervene with some allegations that were at all credible about a fraudulent election. There was talk about the election being stolen long before the election actually took place, especially as COVID ramped up and absentee ballots became a means of voting that would be widespread in this election as never before. Again, absentee ballots have long been recognized as the probably the preeminent vehicle for fraudulent votes to come in an election. And when these critical questions arose in lower courts, in district courts, in the Supreme Court, no one was willing to step up and answer the question or even examine the evidence. That has left Trump, his supporters, and Republicans generally furious and feeling quite a bit disenfranchised. Now, why is all this important? It's important because that disenfranchisement leads to a lack of faith in the election system. The courts had an opportunity to step in. The Justice Department has had an opportunity to step in. Republicans in the Senate even have had an opportunity to step in and say publicly and loudly that they have examined the evidence and they found there to be no election fraud. No one has done that, leaving a cloud or a fog of ambiguity over the entire process for people who feel disenfranchised. And when they hear stuff like, well, the court doesn't want to overturn millions of votes, they answer with, but the fraud overturned my vote. And that is something that cannot be quenched by saying, sorry, we're not going to hear this case. No one has given the action that people want to have. Look, everybody's assuming that the American people want a specific answer. But Americans just want an answer. We want authority to come in and tell us what the law says. We want people who are purportedly objective to look at the evidence instead of dismissing that it exists. And we want them to give an answer to us about what the system says is okay and not okay. And that answer has remained elusive since the 2020 election, and it is leading to a lack of faith and trust in the system. And I feel that that lack of faith and trust in the system will carry on into the next several elections and may do permanent and lasting damage to this country. That is the biggest risk that we face right now. All right, guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that YouTube loves for you to do, and that really helps me out. Thanks a bunch. Have a good day. Merry Christmas. Peace. Peace.